Hi. Sorry. Let's do that again. Something in my throat.
That's what she said.
Let's try this again. Hi. Welcome to the Argument Clinic. I'm Coach.
I'm Navy.
Basically what we do on this show is, well, we get in an argument. We only really have one rule. We never ever argue about anything that actually matters. So that means no politics, no sports, and no religion.
Or the theology of Heracles based on isosceles triangles as configured by Newton's third law of physics.
Dude. English.
That's why we can't argue about it. Thank you for winning that for me.
Our suggestion this week came from Barbara.
Barbara? Yeah.
Yeah, it came from Barbara.
Yeah.
Sure. What were we going to argue about?
Stretching organs.
You can't stretch organs. They're musical instruments. They don't get bigger.
But you can in an accordion.
An accordion's not an organ. It's a completely different instrument.
So?
It has similar parts to organs, but it itself is not an organ.
There are many procedures out there. Stomach stapling, banding, liposuction, everything. Kind of leads you to the idea that people stretch their stomachs and they want to stop it. Yes?
No.
Well, they do want to stop it.
Well, yeah, but all the different surgical procedures and everything they do, it changes the size of the stomach by restricting its area, but you can't stretch your stomach. I realize that's a popular myth, but it's impossible to stretch your stomach.
No. It is very possible to stretch your stomach. Whether or not it stays in that form is a different topic.
See, that's
because you
stretching.
can stuff yourself until your stomach stretches, and then explodes.
Yeah, but that's not stretching. That's expanding. There's a difference.
Stretches.
No, when you stretch your muscle, it gets in that state and it stays there permanently.
No, because you can stretch it to ripping.
You can't. Yeah, but
therefore
you can stretch it too far. But that's also. But in an organ sense, the stomach is an organ, not a muscle.
Yeah.
It's got muscles around it, but it itself is an organ.
Yeah.
Organs are one size. You can't stretch them. They can expand and contract, for sure.
Yeah.
They can get bigger or smaller, and there's several organs in the body that do that. Your lungs are one of them. But you cannot stretch your stomach. The argument here is people that are overweight are all like, oh, I've eaten so much for so many years, my stomach has stretched. You can't do that.
I've heard skinny people say that.
I'm sure, but
you hear being racist.
You hear it more from heavyweight people. So
what are you trying to say?
I don't think I'm trying to say anything. I just said it.
You're mean.
Okay. But an organ doesn't stretch. It expands and contracts. You cannot
you know what? A water balloon expands and contracts. It explodes when it stretches too far. You can stretch organs, whether or not they stay in that situation.
But that's not the definition of stretching. Expanding and contracting is not stretching. There's a difference. They're designed to expand and contract. If they hold air, or as in the stomach's case, food, they get bigger and then they go smaller, but they don't stretch or technically shrink. An organ only has one size. Once it gets to its limit, whatever its limit is, you can't make it bigger.
Again, like a water balloon.
Right.
Guess what? When you deflate it, it kind of goes all wibbly.
Right. But
therefore it's stretched.
No, it's always the exact same amount of latex in a water balloon.
Which means that
your
stomach can expand and take a different shape.
Yes, but it's not stretching.
And therefore it has stretched. And when it deflates, suddenly it's still the same amount. It's just all wibbly.
For example, when you stretch a muscle, okay, you are inherently making that muscle bigger. What happens when you stretch?
Stretching it.
Yes, what happens when you stretch is it adds small tears, just like lifting. When you lift weights or stretch, it's the same basic thing. You're just doing it for different purposes.
No, when you lift weights, I lift beer.
Well, sure. Beer's technically a weight.
Okay, no, it's soda.
Beer, well, even soda's technically a weight, so you're still lifting weights.
You know what? Your hand is technically a weight.
Yes, it is. That's why
you're a weight.
That's why they have body weight exercises. Anyway, when you do that, when you stretch or lift any weights, it adds very small tears to the muscle, which then the muscle has to repair, which makes your muscle bigger.
Thank you, Google.
Okay? You cannot do that with an organ.
Yes, You can.
No, you can't.
Yes,
An
because
organ is the
you
same.
can stretch an organ. It will get little tears because you have pushed it past its capacity. At that point, it causes scar tissue. They're leaving it slightly bigger.
You cannot push an organ past its capacity without rupturing the organ. And that's not
And
stretching.
therefore, then it's not good. You have stretched it past its capacity.
You've expanded it past its
ruptured
capacity.
it. Therefore, it's not going to go back to its original form, is it?
But it'll go back to its original size when it heals.
If it heals, it ruptured. I'm pretty sure you're dead.
Well, then it doesn't matter.
Which is why we're arguing about this.
Of course. But when you expand an organ or contract an organ, its overall mass does not change. When you stretch a muscle, in the sense that people talk about stretching, this isn't like stretching gum. This is stretching an organ is what people are talking about. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, that's off track. Didn't see that off track coming at all.
Nope.
And I was the one that drove the car there.
Thank you for falling asleep at the wheel.
Falling
asleep at the wheel. You know who comes on...
No, asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, okay. Sure. But still, you know who comes on after them? Death on the Highway. Or
Back on track.
Or emergency truck stop.
An emergency truck stop would exist anywhere your truck happens to stop in an emergency. You don't have to pull off the highway. If your truck
it helps to pull off the highway.
Well, it makes it easier.
The highway.
Yeah, but if your truck blows a motor and it doesn't move more than another couple of inches, where your truck comes to a stop is the emergency, because it stopped in an emergency. It's now an emergency, and the truck stopped. Therefore, that's an emergency truck stop right there in the center lane. You may be another 30 feet down the road because you weren't expecting the car to stop, but your emergency truck stop is wherever the truck happens to stop. It doesn't have to be at a Flying J or any of that kind of thing.
And here's how I get us back on topic. And you know how that truck driver had to make an emergency stop? It's because his stomach expanded and ruptured.
Not stretched.
It ruptured, it expanded, it stretched.
No, a stretch is different than an expansion. When we're talking about organs and parts of the body...
Here's a stretch. I missed.
See, as parts of the body go... Now, yeah, there are things you can stretch. Gum, Stretch Armstrong.
You figure his organs probably stretch.
He doesn't have organs. He's solid rubber.
Fantastic, probably his organs stretch.
Comic book.
So?
Not real life.
Don't care. Neither is gum.
His best... With body parts, it's not... There are things that can stretch, that are made out of... Yeah, there are things that can stretch out of objects or materials that can stretch. Your organs are not one of them. When you talk about a body, it is done as it is designed to be. You can stretch a muscle to make it grow, to make it bigger, to make yourself stronger. An organ cannot be done that way. You cannot stretch an organ.
Yes, you can.
No, you can't.
Skin is an organ.
It doesn't stretch.
See anybody gauge their ears? You can stretch any piece of skin. Skin is an organ. Go to Africa. Check out those people with lip discs. You can stretch an organ. Skin is an organ.
Skin is an organ, but skin does something that the rest of your organs don't do.
That doesn't matter. I just proved it.
No,
I win.
Skin has very special properties of where it changes every day. You're taking body parts off every day. You lose skin every day.
Guess what? Stomach acid, you're doing the same thing with your stomach.
Through the lining, but that's not the exterior of the stomach.
So,
the inside of the stomach, the lining, maybe.
Basic process. Ooh, damn it. Yeah.
You can't stretch. Okay.
Let me make this a little more... Now he's stumbling.
Let me make this a little more specific to the actual argument we're really having here.
The argument
you cannot stretch an internal organ.
Now you're changing the rules to make sure you win.
Yeah. But
no.
Wait a minute. Hold on. No, I'm not. We don't have any rule. We only have one rule. And I'm not breaking that rule by changing the angle of my argument. I'm simply finding the correct path to a winning argument, that's all.
Just because you've lost, now you have to try to cheat to get it to win.
I haven't lost, the argument's not over yet. You cannot stretch an internal organ. Your stomach can expand and contract as you eat, but it goes back to the same size. That's why a doctor can talk to every single person that comes into his office and say, your stomach is about this big.
Yeah, but if he's a little person, that just doesn't work.
It's comparative to body size, sure.
No, if the doctor is a little person, your stomach is this big. I don't think so.
If you can make that good of a general argument where your stomach is this big, your brain is well, most people's brain is this big, yours isn't.
His has been stretched. Like gum.
You can expand and contract an organ. You cannot stretch it. Therefore, when people talk about, oh, I stretched my stomach, no, you just got fat.
Yeah, that's why my pants don't fit.
Yeah, but that's not stretching your organ. That's adding the orange marmalade-looking substance that surrounds your stomach and the abdominal area. That's not the organ itself. It stays the same size. It'll expand to fit whatever you put into it, but as it digests, it goes back to its original size.
Your skin expands to fit whatever you put into it, and it doesn't go back.
No, because your skin is truly stretching. It's not like the internal organ.
Your skin is an organ.
Yes, but it's not one of the internal organs that is restricted by the amount of space given to it.
You know, I bet if you took a needle and inject something into your eye, it would swell up, and it would probably stay that way.
Your eye's technically not an organ.
I disagree.
Well, that doesn't... So what? Disagreeing is the point of the show. That doesn't mean you're right.
So? I can still disagree.
Yeah. I mean, put in the comment section if the eye is actually an organ. I could be completely making something up here.
Go for it, Rusty. You're about the only one who does comment.
You also, depending on your accent, you can't stretch organ. It's a state.
So? Why would you want to stretch organ?
Well, I'm not saying you would. I'm just saying you couldn't.
And on a map, you can definitely squish it. No,
you can fold it.
Not necessarily.
You can change its shape and size, but it's always the same shape and size inside of both of them. When you unfold it, it's still the same size.
No, because on Google Earth, zoom out, zoom out, zoom out, zoom out, zoom out, zoom out.
You're not stretching anything. You're just taking a further vantage point. Organ's still the same size. It's just you're taking a longer view.
Well, you can leave organ there and guess what? Minimize. Look at how big you are now.
It's still the same size proportionally to everything else it was on. You didn't stretch or shrink anything. You just, again, changed the perspective you were using to view it.
In bits?
Yeah.
The data is still the same size.
Exactly. Thank you.
And therefore, it's not organ, it's the data.
But, at the same time, organ's not an internal organ. It's an external organ. And in fact, it's actually an imaginary organ. Because there's no actual drawn line border that actually divides it. We just made arbitrary lines in the sand and said, this is you.
Arbitrary?
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to repronounce it for you.
Good, because I mispronounced it on purpose.
I know you did. It was very arbitrary of you.
Yeah. So, suck your toe all the way to Mexico when you get to see the bear. Never mind. Get away.